I'm Steve Lance. Tonight with me here in studio is Doug Collins, former Republican congressman from the state of Georgia, and David Carlucci, former Democratic state senator in New York State and Democratic strategist. Welcome. Come here. Great to be with you. We're live tonight just across from the Capitol, where members of Congress are getting ready for President Biden's State of the Union address in just about an hour. Tonight, Biden will command the attention of what could be his largest crowd before November's election. Now, we do know some of what the president will be saying tonight based on what has been released by the White House. So let's first turn to our White House correspondent, Iris Tao, who is at the Capitol, right next to the House floor where the president will be speaking. Iris, what can you tell us? What is the energy like there?
Good evening to you, Steve. So we're just getting some extras by the White House about Biden's speech tonight, and they're offering us a glimpse into some of the biggest things we're watching for. First, on how President Biden would address former President Trump, his May 2024 rival, and addressing the thorny issue about concerns of his age. So according to the excerpts, Biden will say, quote, "My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy. Other people my age see a different story, an American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me." So right there, we'll see Biden take a swipe at Trump, though at least here not directly mentioning his name, but using one of the biggest themes of his own campaign, that is democracy, and labeling Trump as a threat to democracy. And by saying other people my age, Biden's again trying to make the point that Trump at 78 isn't that much younger either. We have heard former President Trump repeatedly firing back against Biden's accusations at Trump's rallies. He's saying that it's much better than Biden physically. So it's going to be very interesting to see how President Trump responds to Biden's perhaps implicit attacks on him during Trump's live play-by-play response to Biden's speech tonight. Meanwhile, another topic that Biden will highlight will be abortion. According to the excerpts, Biden will try to use this issue to try to get people out to vote. So Biden will say, quote, "Clearly those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women in America. They will find out again in 2024.
Yeah,
abortion, as we know, has become one of the most important talking points for Democrats in this year's election. For example, tonight, we're going to see dozens of Democratic lawmakers bring in guests that have ties to the abortion topic tonight to the State of the Union speech. And the third issue that Biden will highlight will be the economy and people's perception of the state of the economy in our country. So he's expected to say, quote, "It doesn't make the news, but in thousands of cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told." And that truly reflects one of the biggest frustrations by this White House, and that is the fact that most American people are not approving of President Biden's handling of the economy, despite some recent good economic news about inflation coming down. The White House has been trying to emphasize it.
That's a joke.
Trump has been hammering Biden on that topic, saying that MAGAnomics will bring back the success that Bidenomics has failed to deliver. Here's a part of what former President Trump
talk about failing to deliver.
President Biden's speech tonight. Watch.
Though caused the biggest stir in the press. You might remember with the migrant caravans when a whole lot of Haitians were photographed under a bridge waiting to illegally immigrate to the United States, and for some reason it was the Haitians who got people up in arms. When the Haitian migrant caravan happened, the Biden administration actually took some action, and the Haitians were one of the very, very, very few groups who were to an extent forbidden from being able to get some of these different programs. And so the incentive of them to mass migrate to the United States came to a screeching halt. But that could change soon, because Haiti is about to fall. The country is being overthrown right now. And an extremely violent gang had just broken out of prison there, a massive prison break, and they started haphazardly, just savagely murdering everybody. There are now reports of it trying to overthrow the government in Haiti. And there were reports of really horrific crimes, including indiscriminate killings and even cannibalism. The Daily Mail said that heavily armed gangs have tried to seize control of Haiti's main airport after 4,000 inmates escaped prison and started massacring people indiscriminately. They say shocking videos have emerged of men and women fleeing in fear as shots ring out across the Tucson Louverture International Airport. The ensuing chaos has forced more than 15,000 people to flee their homes. many of which have been destroyed, leaving them living in camps. The attack on the airport, it says, marks a dramatic rise in gang violence in the country, Haiti, with groups exchanging gunfire with police and soldiers in the latest attack on key government sites. The gang's aim is to prevent Prime Minister Ariel Henry from returning to Haiti, where he is thought to be abroad. Now, this type of destabilization is spreading. And my guess is we're going to start seeing more and more of it, because there's two sides to it, right? One is that you actually do have very powerful gangs in a lot of these countries that are fighting back against the governments, because in some of these countries you actually have the governments trying to actually enforce the law again. Others are going the opposite way. Mexico, under its communist government, they have a communist president now, is actually giving a relative free pass to the cartels and gangs, and is actually trying to shift the blame of all the problems of the country to the United States. And of course, while doing that, facilitating mass illegal immigration to America, to the United States. Cuba is also doing very similar things. There have been reports of them previously emptying out like prisons and insane asylums, just like Venezuela is doing, and sending them to America. And of course, Venezuela is also sending their criminals here. Meaning some of these more communist countries are manipulating the open border, crisis and the migrant crisis in order to get rid of the people they don't want. They're sending here the people who possibly could be causing problems in their country. And you, of course, have other countries like El Salvador, Ecuador, and others who are trying now to go after the gangs. Argentina, for example, right? And you also have some in-between ones caught in the crossfire. The issue we have in Latin America almost across the board is it is becoming destabilized in many instances. Case in point here is Cuba. Cuba right now is at
An opportunity for President Biden to connect with the American people in this election year. The stakes tonight really couldn't be higher for multiple reasons. So I guess, Doug, what key points does Biden need to hit on in tonight's speech to persuade the American people to elect him come November?
Well, I think one of the things is sort of different than many times. I think it's not what he's going to say. This is going to be a political speech. I think David and I, we both agree. This is going to be a preview of what he's going to run on in the fall. So I think the bigger issue here is not what he's actually saying. We've heard that a lot. It's going to be his presentation. It's going to be, can he go through the part and not get in a fight with the teleprompter? Can he stay on track? If there is some distraction from members of Congress, if they said something, will he stay on track? So I think tonight it's going to be a lot of people are going to be looking to see how does he stand up, because in the last 30 to 45 days there's been a lot of questions from outside people, special prosecutors and all, who have questioned his ability to remember, who has questioned his mental fitness. This will be the time to stand up there and either show he has it or he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I got to agree. I mean, this is the time that you say it's not really what you say, it's how you say it. And often these are political speeches. It's a way to set the policy tone. But more than anything, I think there will be some good policy in there, and we get to talk about it. But more importantly, it's going to be how does he actually deliver and get this through to the American people. So the style is way more important tonight than the substance. And I think most people are going to be looking for that. And I'm sure if there's a mess up, we're going to see it replayed on the cable networks over and over again. If there's a great policy speech, we probably won't see that played over and over again. But it'll be really interesting to see. And for that reason, I'm hopeful that more people will actually tune in tonight than they did last year.
Now, right now, we're going to turn our attention to the Capitol, where we have Congressman Kevin Kiley joining us from Capitol Hill. And we're getting feedback right now. He'll be joining us in just a moment. So I guess we'll just continue.
Shortages. Remember the narrative in Cuba, just like any communist country. When the communism fails, they don't say communism has failed. They say capitalism has destroyed communism. They blame it on America. And because Cuba is playing the victim, they're saying the United Nations needs to help them. BBC News says that Cuba's government has for the first time asked the UN Food Program for help as food shortages on the communist-run island worsen. The World Food Program said it had received an unprecedented official request from the Cuban government for help providing powdered milk to children under 7 years of age. The request is a sign of the seriousness of Cuba's economic crisis, as well as a shortage of milk, fuel, and medicines that are also now running low. And again, remember what I've been saying. There's very likely a war brewing in Latin America. It is very, very likely, in my opinion, that Venezuela is going to invade Guyana. If Venezuela invades Guyana, Venezuela, of course, being under Maduro, formerly Chavez, they're a borderline communist country because of their leadership. They will very likely also get support from Lula in Brazil. Lula, of course, was in prison. The Supreme Court in Brazil took actions to make him so he could run for president again, and then took actions against the sitting president at the time, Bolsonaro, who was a conservative, and they're now targeting Bolsonaro with criminal attacks and so on, just like they're going after Trump in the U.S. But what's happening now is that with Lula in power, he's very, very far left as well, kind of communist. He was the one who helped create, of course, the Foro ao Sao Paulo with Cuba, working with the Sandinistas and other narco-terrorist organizations to create a lot of the leftist waves that swept Latin America.
For Joe Biden. Those uncommitted votes, they have not said that they will not vote for Joe Biden come November. They're just trying to send that message that hopefully they can move him a little bit, but they're not saying they're going to sit out or not vote for him completely.
Yeah, I think that's going to be
Over
a seal, especially with this
Gaza.
the younger pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas voters. I think that's a big difference. I think they have
There's
a serious,
passion.
legitimate issue there.
There's passion
that's going to
there.
come.
I mean, let's unpack the uncommitted vote.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's look,
Well, first of all, I think uncommitted, like I said, I think it's very attractive because what is it? And you can easily build a coalition behind uncommitted because there's a lot of people that are disenfranchised for whatever reason. And it might not be about Israel, Gaza. It might be about something else, and you can cobble those together. Look, 10,000 people voted uncommitted in the last 3 Michigan primaries.
We're going to get back to this. We do have the congressman standing by for us, but we're going to unpack this more as the night goes on. We do want to bring in Congressman Kevin Kiley joining us live right now from Capitol Hill. Congressman, it's great to have you on the program here. If you could, tell us, what are some of the issues that you think the president will be addressing tonight?
Well, the issues that he ought to address are the border, are the economy, are the rise in crime that we're seeing across the country, and he ought to address them in a way that takes responsibility for how his own policy failures have led to these terrible outcomes that are making life so much more difficult and our country so much more less safe.
Congressman, given the ongoing surge of illegal border crossings, how do you view President Biden's current policies?
I view them as among the worst policies we have ever seen. This president came in and on day one, strategically and systematically opened the southern border and created a less secure border than we have had in the entire history of our country. He is setting records every year. He's setting records practically every month for the number of folks coming into the country illegally, the number of people bringing fentanyl into the country, which is striking communities in every part of this country, contributing to the horror of human trafficking, people on the terrorist watch list that are coming in. And we know that it's the president's actions when he came into office that created this crisis, where he said, we're going to get rid of Remain in Mexico, we're going to do catch and release, we're going to totally abuse the parole and asylum process, turn them into something unlike anything we've ever seen, we're going to end the border emergency, we're going to pull back Title 42, we're even going to stop.
War takes place, you could expect Brazil under Lula to side with Venezuela under Maduro. And there's going to be a destabilization of the region. This, combined with the migrant crisis, is going to create the right grounds for many of this to take place. And of course,
Wolverines.
Now, remember just before the attacks in Israel, where a group of Hamas terrorists crossed up the border, massacred people, then kidnapped people, thereby goading Israel to attack them and try to get the people back, causing, of course, the image of a, of course, attack on Islam that is being used by Muslim terrorists in Iran to say that they have a right now to fight back against this. And of course, the flames of global terrorism are lit yet again. Well, just before all this happened, you might remember something important. The leader of the Palestinian Authority traveled to China and met personally with Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, right before those attacks happened. Very similarly, you might remember the heads of the Taliban went to China and met with Xi Jinping just before Biden pulled our troops out and just before the Taliban took over the country. In other words, it seems to be there's an international element playing into all of this.
Naturally.
A lot of people have been saying, well, the Palestinian Authority is better than Hamas. But it turns out, as you would expect, the two are deeply linked, including financially. And it turns out the Palestinian Authority is even paying Hamas. The Washington Free Beacon said, as President Joe Biden pushes to empower the Palestinian Authority in the name of Middle East peace, the PA has committed tens of millions of dollars for terrorism.
At the border. So all of it was done in a very conscious way. And in the same vein, he could consciously pull back those policies and restore some semblance of sanity and order. And it is truly beyond me why he's refused to do that. So maybe he'll do that tonight. Maybe he'll come and commit himself anew and recognize the mistakes that were made. But frankly, I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen.
Neither am
Now,
I.
you obviously represent a district in California which shares a border with Mexico, is seeing some of the largest numbers flowing through. We have seen, because of the exacerbation of this crisis, blue cities and blue states, or certain areas where you have representatives that are, Democrat, kind of switch on the issue, whether it's Eric Adams or independent Senator Sinema. Do you see California starting to make that shift that we've seen in some of these blue cities and states?
Well, you certainly saw the mayor of Los Angeles, as well as several other sanctuary cities, wrote a letter to the president asking for help, asking for money to deal with the migrants coming into their cities. These are sanctuary cities; they're inviting them there, and so
Another
it's just
day
crazy
older,
that they
another
don't
trillion in
recognize
debt.
that and reverse those policies. But the reality is that when you look at what's happening, ever since Texas started consciously making an effort to use its own authority to deal with the border crisis, you're seeing them move just to Arizona and specifically to California. And in California in particular, not only do we have sanctuary cities, we're a sanctuary state. Gavin Newsom has proudly declared California to be a sanctuary state, which, by the way, the irony of that is this is the states actively interfering with securing the border. And now you have the Biden administration saying that states like Texas shouldn't be able to proactively try to secure the border, but they're just fine with states like California getting in the way of securing the border. California, by the way, also has the only state in the country that's offering free health care to everyone in this country illegally, free taxpayer-funded health care. So, the blame rests with the Biden administration for the policies that they have consciously put into place that have precipitated this crisis, but the policies of a state like California have certainly not helped any.
Captured while carrying out Hamas's October 7 attack on Israel and the resulting war. And notes, since October 7th, the PA, Palestinian Authority, has doubled down on its long-standing pay-for-slay policy, which Iran does as well, by the way, which gives salaries and benefits to Palestinians in prison for involvement in violence against Israel and to the families of those killed in the revolution against the Jewish state. The policy does not distinguish between terrorists and civilians. Iran, again, does the same thing. But based on Israel Defense Force estimates of enemy casualties and prisoners, the PA, Palestinian Authority, has put itself on the hook
because the only way that was reversed was because of the courts. Biden was fine keeping that in place, and the courts reversed it. Now, that was a COVID error, health emergency issue, and that's why it was in place. And this court said, look, we're not in a COVID emergency anymore, so we have to remove it. All these executive orders are just little Band-Aids. And to say that that's the answer is wrong. If it's your top priority, then come to the table and compromise. This idea that it's your way or the highway, and then you still say it's a top priority, well, that means you're not serious about actually getting results.
Do you think Remain in Mexico was a Band-Aid?
Well, Remain in Mexico we were hemorrhaging billions of dollars to the Mexican government, and it's not a long-term solution. So this is about the only way we're going to fix illegal immigration is through amending the legal immigration process and bringing it into the 21st century.
Congressman.
Look, I mean, I hope David's party continues this path till November. I really do. Because if there's a difference in what is actual, the perception and reality on the border.
Of illegal immigrants into the country, and they say that we're the threat. Now, Customs and Border Protection, it says, has refused to disclose information about a program last year secretly arranging flights for thousands of undocumented immigrants from foreign airports directly to U.S. cities. It means that while record numbers of migrants were flowing over the southern border last year, the Biden White House was also directly transporting them into the country. Folks, understand why this is such a big deal. They were blaming this on Governor Abbott in Texas. When they had hundreds of thousands of migrants flying into American cities, they said it was Texas's fault. California was threatening to sue Texas. The mainstream media was blaming Texas. But we know now that the Biden administration was sending them directly on flights to these cities, meaning that while Texas was being blamed for this, while that was the narrative, really going after them and demonizing them and attacking them, they kept their mouths zipped shut because they knew the truth, which is that these individuals, the federal government in this case, was directly involved in secretly flying them into the country, and they're still trying to hide it from us. Now it says here, use of a cell phone app, and I'll get into that in a bit, has allowed for the near undetected arrival by air of 320,000 aliens with no legal rights to enter the United States. Your tax dollars are paying for that. And they note that it comes after a controversy over a 2022 transportation program in which the administration used taxpayer money to move migrants throughout the country on overnight flights, meaning that even in addition to them flying them into the United States from foreign countries, once they arrive in the United States, they're then being flown all around the country as well using your tax dollars. Now, this was actually exposed to an extent back in 2022. The Biden administration was, and frankly still is, being extremely secretive about it. Meanwhile, they're letting Texas take the blame for it, and they're not standing up and saying, hey, actually, we done it, right? The Daily Mail said that secret government charter flights, this is back in 2022, paid for by taxpayer funds, are quietly transporting migrants from the southern border to other U.S. cities across the U.S. The flights, which take off from border cities like El Paso, Texas, are taking busloads of illegal aliens to various cities around the country, including Jacksonville, Florida, Alexandria, Louisiana, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Maybe right into those swing states, right? Right into those swing states and the swing counties, which can determine the outcome of future elections, possibly, right? Now, it notes that lawmakers are demanding more transparency about the flights and where the migrants are going, with some states and regional leaders alleging that they were not informed about the relocation plans. The government, in other words, the federal government, is hiding this even from the local level politicians.
Yeah.
It notes that Health and Human Services has
the
misled
Democrats
me,
for you.
according to one of the congressmen, has misled me or lied to me several times. I have asked. They actually told me any flights coming into Pennsylvania, we will notify you and the local schools. Congressman Dan Newser told News Nation, and he said they didn't. They haven't notified us once. In other words, the federal government is hiding this even politically. You have to ask why they are doing that. The call for transparency, it says, comes as the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention plans next week, this is last year, to end restrictions known as Title 42 that have prevented migrants up until that time from seeking asylum under U.S. law and international treaty on grounds of preventing the spread of COVID-19. Border officials are preparing for a surge in the number of migrants and charter flights by our own government when the health order expires on May 23rd. And again, that was 2022, folks. Now, look, a lot of this is also just being facilitated by an app that the government created for the illegal immigrants. This is being run through U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and the app that you can download on your smartphone is called CBP One. You can schedule an appointment with the government to illegally enter the United States. It lets the illegals book appointments with Customs and Border Protection, and they can even set appointments on when they want to illegally enter the United States, surrender themselves, and then enter the asylum scam to take away your tax dollars for free houses, free food, and free everything else. Let me show you the website. This is the actual website for this program. This is on the actual Customs and Border Protection website, the official one. It says here, on October 28th, 2020, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, launched the free CBP One mobile application on the Apple app and Google Play stores. CBP1 is a mobile application that serves as a single portal to a variety of CBP services. Through a series of guided questions, the app directs each type of user to the appropriate services based on their needs. Maybe you just need some free money, right? CBP1 is available now, it says, to schedule appointments. CBP1 and the advanced submission and appointment scheduling process are free to use. Non-citizens, i.e. illegal immigrants who want to come here illegally, located in central or northern Mexico who seek to travel to the United States, may use the U.S. Customs and Border Protection CBP1 app to submit information in advance and schedule an appointment to present themselves at the below southwest border land ports of entry. And these areas where they can go and surrender themselves are these: Arizona,
This is
Nogales,
crazy.
And
Texas.
then what David has just talked about. Here's the big issue. Biden can't have it both ways. You can't say that I can't do anything, but yet the very first things you do is reverse executive orders of the previous administration in which the crossings were at the lowest they had been in 25 plus years. You immediately reverse that. They begin to go up. Okay, you can't have it both ways. You can't say I can't do anything about this and at the same time reverse executive orders, which you took the action. But again, and as someone who served as ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, we had immigration. This is not an issue that was wanted to be fixed. Okay, and I'll say, I'll say that, my record's clear. I'll move bipartisan all day long. When you have HR 2 go over to the Senate,
Got a
and they
lot
don't
of
even take it
echo.
up, then they do their own little game group that they do to have a bill that allows up to 5,000 or more a day, and these other issues coming through. And then you come back and say, who's the one not negotiating here? When you were in the legislature in New York, you have bills that come from the House and the Senate, and you find a compromise between the two. You don't have ignore completely, and you don't have an administration that is simply saying we're not going to deal with this. This is the problem. And again, I just say this: the proof's in the pudding. The proof is in the border crossing, and the proof is in the border, and it's not about legal. It's not about coming here, and they're not coming through. Mayorkas is abusing the parole system. They should never be taking people and sending them through, quote, legal means of parole, which is, by the way the gentleman who killed Laken Riley got into this country and was left by New York and was left by Athens, who didn't prosecute this. So this is an issue. If the Democrats want to go down this pathway saying Republicans are the problem here, go right ahead. From a political perspective, I'll take that all day long and twice on
What it's
Sunday.
going to mean is the House is going to lose its majority. I mean, that's perfectly fair.
And
Why?
Joe Biden's going to go back to Delaware.
No, because Biden's going to be reelected. Why?
No.
I'll tell you why, because
I don't think so,
all we've seen
dude.
tonight from the Republicans, and all I've seen is blame.
You
The
forgot
Congress
about
just
the
came on.
kitchen
He wants to blame
table.
He wants to blame Joe Biden. He wants to blame everybody but himself. And why?
Okay.
Because if it's a top priority, then compromise. That was the last
I blame Biden.
Close the border. You cannot, the president cannot close the border unilaterally. That would be overruled. by the
Bullshit.
courts. We know it. Everyone knows it. Even Trump met resistance when he did the executive orders.
All I'll say
No,
is
it
all I'll say
didn't.
is 1,000 border crossings at the end of 1,000 at the end of 20.
It's all the NGOs.
December.
And
Tell
I
me
gotta
which
push
one
back.
works.
I got to push back about this talking point. The most secure border in our history.
Hidalgo, Laredo, and El Paso, in California, Calexico, and San Ysidro. Folks, I actually went myself personally to Eagle Pass and to San Ysidro to watch this, and it's real. Now, they note further in, CBP strongly encourages non-citizens without prior authorization to the United States, in other words, illegal immigrants, right, to use the CBP1 mobile app to request.
Which one? 1,000? Less than 1,000 a day. When if you in 2020, there's over 400,000.
Yeah, but you also had COVID, pent-up demand, and a global issue of people fleeing their homes. And this is something where people are desperate restaurants.
I'll take it back before COVID. It was being addressed. This is a tough issue. I get it.
No,
But
really,
the issue is
the Republicans have punted, and I think, look, we
The
won the last
people are
special
voting on
election.
this administration.
The special election, Congressional District 3 in New York, right? It was a Republican district. A Democrat.
Somebody's playing with the reverb.
Republicans are saying,
As being an example how Democrats are going to win in a district that was basically a flip district against a person who was on your party running on a Republican ticket. No, I'm sorry. And you're coming off of a gentleman who was, again, I have my difference kicked out. Santos, who was kicked out. Again, that's like saying the water is smooth until the boat comes
Okay,
by.
well, you want to
Okay,
point
no.
other things that actually don't matter, but elections matter. And that's what I'm getting. And what I'm getting at is because why? Republicans want to make immigration the top issue, but yet they want to see the
Immigration is an issue, dude.
We're not going to do it. You don't want us to do it, Master Trump? We're not going to do it. No, I'm not kidding. And that's been a real problem.
I didn't see they tried. I didn't see.
It's been a contentious issue for years.
Because Democrats don't want to take it up.
Well, and Republicans don't want to take up a bill that actually
Damn. Oh, man.
Let's shift focus right now.
I can't do anything but laugh at these fools.
Is going to be focusing on.
And in New York, you have had like 5 killing people in the last month here in Washington, because they come here and they try to have territory to sell narcotics or
drug trafficking.
Drug trafficking. So you will have a very important problem here. So Salvador have demonstrated that you can go
Right.
against the gangs.
What do you think of the policies in many states in America? New York would be one example, DC as well.
I read the other day that if you stole in California less than $1,000,
Yeah.
it
Fine.
doesn't matter. If you don't have consequences because you stole $900, the rule of law will be destroyed. So I think that is terrible. The important thing, the principle, is that you stole. It's not the principle how much you stole. And that is very important to order a country, to have order, to have rule of law.
So tell me about this is just 3 months and there's been pretty huge changes. What's next?
Well, we have to go deep in the changes. We have now more or less 10% of the changes we want to do. We have a very huge state. We have to work to have less state and more private business. That is very important for Argentina. We have to work in developing all we have. We have the second reserve of oil and gas in the world, and we are importing gas because the last government and in the last 20 years, the gas in Argentina the price was 10%. So we have to have the real price to export our gas, export our oil, develop all the products we can. We have the most important extent of agriculture products, no? And now Brazil is in better condition than Argentina because we have a tax for exportation.
Right.
How can you have a tax to take out your products? It's really
A gag order on immigration judges. This is from the government executive. It says the Justice Department is warning one of its employee groups
Why
that it
is
can
this
no longer
happening?
speak publicly without prior agency approval, raising concerns that the Biden administration is placing a gag order on certain workers despite a promise to be their advocates. The issue stems from the National Association of Immigration Judges losing its recognition as a union. It's now a government operation, apparently. Leading justices tell the organization any rights it previously enjoyed as part of a collective bargaining agreement are no longer valid. NAIJ has represented immigration judges for more than 50 years and has never previously faced restrictions on its public testimony. And one of the individuals who spoke on behalf of the NIAJ leaders said this: it's a pretty draconian directive. It's pretty unprecedented. It notes that NIAJ has occasionally used its platform to speak out against policy changes it views as harmful to the roles of immigration judges. The group has regularly made itself available to the media, testified before Congress, and participated in panel discussions. It has frequently derided its placement within justice, as one of the individuals reiterated in a recent congressional testimony, saying it should instead be made an independent court under Article 1 of the Constitution. It notes that political pressure and departmental mismanagement made possible under the current arrangement has contributed to the backlog of nearly 3 million cases, the union has said. And folks, of course, the narrative on mass illegal immigration changes depending on who's talking. The Biden administration is now saying that deporting illegal immigrants itself would harm the country. Remember,
Oh my
they
God.
can't tell you what they're doing.
Demeanor for interrupting the speech after Capitol Police warned him to stop.
And America is safer today than when I took office. The year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up.
He yelled Abbygate and United States Marines after Biden said, America is safer today than the year I took office. Nikui's son was killed in the 2021 suicide bombing attack on Abbygate during the U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan. Nikui was a guest of GOP Representative Brian Mast of Florida. A Capitol Police spokesperson told media that a misdemeanor charge of illegally disrupting Congress carries a $50 fine and is typically resolved without going to court. In a major shakeup, the Republican National Committee, RNC, has a new leader now that former chair Ronna McDaniel has stepped down. Committee members have cast their votes at the group's spring meeting in Houston, Texas today. North Carolina GOP Chairman Michael Whatley, endorsed by Trump, won the unanimous voice vote to become the new chair.
I would like to thank President Trump for his trust and support. There is no one who has been more focused on fighting for the American people, and I am grateful for the opportunity to work with him to win and help revitalize our great nation.
It's a national security threat, right? And they're also saying they can't deport the people because that's actually dangerous to America. And they're also saying, folks, that, of course, these are newcomers and you have to accept them. And they're also saying that if you're a judge, you're not allowed to tell the media what you're doing. You have to ask why they're doing it. And also they're saying that they can't actually secure the border because if they do, they need money, and they don't have money, and Congress needs to do it. So it's Congress's fault, and also it's Texas's fault, because they're the ones sending the buses, while they send 320,000 airplanes full of them for their own countries. In other words, pay attention to the lies. Pay attention to what they're saying and the inconsistency within the narrative. They're lying on every step of this, and you should really be questioning why they are lying. But back to this point, right? The national poll says Democratic Texas Representative Veronica Escobar claimed there would be dangerous economic repercussions for deporting illegal immigrants. Appearing Friday on CNN Newsroom with Jim Acosta, the co-chair of President Joe Biden's 2024 re-election campaign, criticized former President Donald Trump for calling for the deportation of illegal immigrants, saying, quote, Democrats have been willing over the decades to not just address border
The man's
security,
insane.
to not just address border security as a whole, but also to address our workforce needs and make sure that we remain a country of immigrants.
What
Maybe
about
it's like
people that
Nancy
need
Pelosi
jobs in
was saying,
America?
we can't deport them. Who's going to pick the oranges? We can't end slavery. Who's going to pick the cotton? Right? It's that narrative. But they say immigration is good for us economically. Now, back to this point. Escobar called former President Trump's pledge to deport illegal immigrants horrific before claiming Trump wants to take us back to an era where people feared being in our own country simply because they belong to a minority group. Maybe if you're violating the laws of this country and you're afraid of being held to account for violating the laws, I wouldn't call that a minority group. Now, regardless, it says, by the way, actually, Latinos are like not a minority anymore. They're actually most of the country now in many places. The Biden campaign note says their officials insisted that it is impossible to deport every undocumented person in this country. I question, are they still undocumented if DHS has processed them and give them documentation? I don't know, right? Regardless, folks, the Biden administration is also using different language for the illegal immigrants. They're now being referred to in some official government documents as newcomers. They're no longer illegal immigrants or even migrants. They're simply new Americans, right? Now,
The Biden administration brings illegal aliens into the country while Americans sleep on the sidewalks. Thanks, Joe Biden.
to give them citizenship. And, language is important when it comes to how these individuals are being defined. The language includes legal definitions. One of the ways our legal system works in America is, of course, there's technicalities based on language. If you're a citizen, there's certain laws that apply to you. If you're an illegal, there are certain laws that apply to you. If you're a newcomer, what are the laws, right? A lot of it is by technical language and definitions within our law. And if you change the language you use to describe a crime, it no longer can fall under certain definitions if you want to go purely by the book. And so it is important how we use these definitions. Now, Town Hall said this: House Republicans blasted the Biden administration for how it recently referred to illegal immigrants in a fact sheet on a bipartisan border agreement. And they said this: the Biden White House is now referring to illegal immigrants as newcomers. House Republicans wrote on X, referring to the fact sheets, the initial paragraphs where it says, the bill also includes $1.4 billion, folks, for cities and states who are providing critical services to newcomers. Folks, they want to give
You're paying for that, folks.
$1.4 billion from our tax dollars at the federal level. If you're wondering why they're sicking the IRS on you, why they're hiring all these new IRS agents to go and find new money, and they're like, we found $1.4 billion new dollars by ripping off the American citizen. They want to give that to cities and states where they are allowing illegal immigrants to get free housing, free food, free services, and everything else. And they're saying it would also expedite work permits for people who are in the country and then qualify, which you'd assume that if they've been processed under the gamed and rigged amnesty system, they'd probably qualify. Now, notice that House Republicans then went on to argue in the Post that the border crisis is a catastrophe by design, and I'd agree with them based on what I've found. And they say it shows how unserious the Commander-in-Chief, Biden, is about stopping the flood of illegal immigrants. And remember also, folks, this will likely be one of the bigger points of debate with the coming elections. With, Super Tuesday behind us, with Biden's State of the Union address, which I'll give my take on in a bit behind us. A lot of this is going to be, of course, playing into the election. And Biden and Trump are now entering campaign mode. Remember also, given that the border crisis is not just an election issue, but also something that is currently bankrupting cities, causing really serious crime, and, destabilizing the country in some areas, states are looking into handling it themselves. The debate around it will not just be on the campaign trail, but also at every other level of government, and especially as these problems will very likely get worse, frankly. Texas, for example, just had a pretty major win on its attempts to secure its own border. Case in point. This is from Red State. It says, on Thursday, we brought you news of a federal district court ruling out of Texas that blocked the state's recently enacted law, Senate Bill 4, which allowed the state, Texas, law enforcement officers to arrest and detain those suspected of entering the country illegally. In his ruling, Judge David Ezra held the provision was an improper attempt by Texas to supersede federal law. But it says Monday, in addition to the blockbuster ruling out of the United States Supreme Court regarding the Colorado ballot case involving former President Donald Trump, where they can no longer remove Trump from the presidential ballots, by the way, comes big news out of the Fifth Circuit regarding the aforementioned Texas law. The appellate court has now placed a stay on the district court ruling. So it has put its own ruling on hold for 7 days to allow the Biden administration time to appeal the case to the Supreme Court. In other words, Texas folks can now, at least to an extent, enforce its own border laws, where the federal government is being absolutely delinquent on that, is ironically even helping the cartels and human traffickers with human trafficking. But remember, as I've been repeatedly saying, remember the big picture here when it comes to the border crisis. This is not just a random issue of people seeking refuge in the United States. It's mostly not that, in fact. This is a government operation. It is state-run human trafficking, with our own government, the United Nations, NGOs, and even criminal groups operating in sync with each other to run it. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you for being here, and as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free.
Recognize the men, you're asked to contact Atlanta Crime Stoppers. Now to a developing story in Athens County. We've learned that a third Ibarra brother has been arrested for entering the country illegally. 24-year-old Argenis Ibarra was arrested February the 23rd. The same day, his brother Jose was arrested for the murder of an Augusta University nursing student, Laken Riley. Authorities say that Argenis entered the U.S. last April near Eagle Pass. He was immediately returned to Mexico before he re-entered weeks later. Argenis was scheduled for an immigration hearing in Philadelphia later this year. He's being held in an ICE detention center in Lumpkin County. We're live at the scene of breaking news right now, where one child is dead and 2 others are injured after a shooting at an Athens mobile home park. Athens Clark County Police say that the shooting happened at the Hallmark Mobile Home Park on Spring Valley Road around 5:30 tonight. Police say one child was killed and another child was injured. The third person who was injured was an adult. The second child and an adult were both hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. This is a developing story. We'll bring you more information on air and online as we learn more.
Noonan police are looking for a woman who appears to encourage a child to steal a purse at a busy restaurant. The entire incident was caught on camera. Police say it happened last Saturday night at the Juicy Crab restaurant. Take a look here. Surveillance video shows the moment. The woman appears to instruct the child to go over to an empty table and take the purse. It belonged to a server at the restaurant. Police aren't sure if the woman is the child's mother or if the other people they were with were involved.
What kind of charges could this woman face?
She's looking at theft by taking charges as well as contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
Police say that's not all. The entire group also skipped out on a $500 bill. If you recognize the woman, reach out to Noonan Police.
Coming up, the father of Oxford High School shooter Ethan Crumbley is accused of making threats over a jailhouse phone.
Investigators identified possible points of failure in the 2021 collapse of a South Florida condo that killed nearly 100 people.